Absolutely. I know a lot of real estate investors right now that are absolutely killing it on properties that are close to hospitals and military bases. Let's think about that. Military bases, they constantly are on the move. They get PCS somewhere else. There's constant flow. Hospitals, travel nurses. You can name your rent. And usually, sometimes that travel nurse is on a contract and that agency is paying their rent, so they don't care what the rent is because the agency is paying for it, right? So you really can name your price. So those are really good actual ways to go ahead and start building wealth, is buy close to things that you know they're going to have constant change, because constant change brings opportunity for you to be able to create more wealth.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing. I think that's really good advice.
Another good one, college campuses.
Welcome to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, and you want to learn some of the insider secrets and uncensored truths from the true professionals in and around real estate, you've come to the right place. Now, let's buckle up for the uncensored truth about real estate and join your host, Brian Cardenas.
All right, welcome everybody to the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. And today we are joined by a special guest, Drew Kozel, and Drew's going to talk about whatever the hell he wants to talk about today, because he specifically wanted to know, is there anything off limits? So we had to remind him, no, nothing is off limits. So welcome, Drew, to the show.
All right, thank you, sir.
Hey, so do me a favor, tell our audience kind of a little bit of your background and kind of where you came from and how you arrived where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Chicago, played football throughout my life, played for Mike Singletary Pee Wee football, played high school, and then had the opportunity to come out here for college. And next thing you know, college life was maybe not for me. I barely graduated. And then really just got into sales and started, the real estate route. And then, and long story short, in 2014, no one knows this. In 2015, I was trying to buy a property with my ex-wife. And she was buying the property, and 3 days before closing, the loan officer called and said, "Hey, I calculated your student loans wrong, and you need to pay them off. And you need to pay off $36,000." And we didn't have it, so long story short, we didn't buy that property. And I said to myself, I don't ever want that to happen to anybody. So I got into real estate lending, and the rest is history.
So I hear that happen to people, and it just like, now that you're on
awful.
the other side of the table, like,
It's
don't
awful.
you wonder, how does that happen? Like, how bad does a loan officer have to be to have that happen?
Yeah, I don't want to bash anybody. It's through one of the big ones, and he was new, and you could just tell, like, the guy was horrible at communication. As a consumer, you're freaking out during the process, right? And like when someone's not responding back to you or getting back in touch with you, there's usually an issue, right? And he was doing that, and I just felt something wasn't right. And then, I sent him a pretty stern email. And then next thing you know, the phone call was, "Oh, by the way, you need to pay off your student loans." And, it was really embarrassing because she was getting the down payment from her parents, right? And I was off the loan because they didn't want me on the loan because we were not married at the time. And thank God that happened. And, it's just awful. I just personally, I knock on wood, I've never had to have that conversation 3 days before closing. So yeah.
So like, thinking back as a consumer and then knowing what you know now, what kind of things would you tell a consumer to maybe ask or inquire about with their potential loan officer or lender to try to figure out, does this person know what they're doing?
Yeah.
To find the right person. Like, what advice can you give?
Ask them their story. What got them passionate about the real estate industry? Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this market that are just in it for the money, and, you can't chase the dollar,
Right.
Right? The dollar will catch up with you and the truth will come out, right? And it's not pretty when it does. And personally, my integrity is more than, a couple $1 million personally. It's just, I think that's it. Had the conversations of, with student loans, they're in forbearance right now, but what are you going to calculate as my payment or anything like that? Because, yes, the Biden administration did waive some of the student loans, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're gone right now, right? the future is the future. They're not waived right this second. So you need to have those conversations, and you also need to talk about like some plans of like, what do you see? What do you think the best route is? Should I go FHA? Should I go conventional? Should I, put down 5%? Should I put down 20%? Like, there's 3 things when it comes to buying a house, right? Income, credit, assets, right? And you need to have that conversation with that loan officer of what does my income look like? What does my credit look like? And what do my assets look like? Because if they can't have a detailed conversation and educate you as a consumer and talk to you like they're educating you and talk to you like a friend, not just like a sale, they're not worth your time.
Yeah. I think it's usually a pretty good indication if they're not leading that conversation talking about those things.
Correct.
Because anybody that's a good loan officer is going to be having those conversations, discovering those things, talking about what are their goals and thinking about long-term. And to me, if I was a consumer and I was having to drive the ship and like initiate all those topics of discussion, that to me would be a giant red flag. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started in this business working for one of the big VA lenders, and literally I had people call in, like we were inbound call center, right? People call in and they literally have a conversation within like had the conversation of someone buying a house within like a minute. And then, all right, let's go ahead and get pre-qualified. I'm like, so what do you know about them?
That was pretty in-depth, huh?
Yeah. I'm like, what do you know about them? Oh, I just know they're a veteran and they want to buy a house. Okay. Well, what's the plan for them? How long are they planning to stay in the house? How do you not have that conversation with them? How do you not have that conversation to educate them, to give them different options so they really see you as a trusted advisor?
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, I just want to go on to the next call. No, come on. Like,
yeah. And that's one of the things that talking to people in different areas of the mortgage business anyway, whether you're talking to an online lender or a bank, mortgage banker, mortgage broker,
correct.
like I've had that conversation before where, a lot of those different places, they don't really have the focus on, the long-term relationship with the client. It's
correct.
a transaction-based kind of
correct.
thing. And when you get into that circumstance as a consumer, you might be able to squeak out a good deal on a transaction, but you don't really know because you don't have somebody giving you the proper advice and asking
correct.
the right questions. So I think that's really important is, make sure that you're having longer than a 1-minute conversation with a loan officer to discover what your motivations are and what your goals are. So, if you're talking to somebody right now, and this is a topic that I see a lot because I'll post on social, and I got into a big back and forth with a bunch of people on TikTok the other day about the market right now.
Yeah.
And you invest in real estate. What do you think is going on, and what do we have to look forward to if somebody's thinking, well, should I buy now or should I wait? Let's start there. Kind of tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So if you plan to fail, if you plan to fail, you failed. No. What's the saying?
If you fail to plan.
Yeah. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Like, this is the opportunity. Like, this market here, I really see some opportunities. Like, we're sitting at interest rates in the high 6s, 7s right now. So I see the market, inventory is picking up. I think we were sitting at like 4,000 units. Like 4,000 units, when I mean units, that was 4,000 listings in Maricopa County in April. And now we're over 20,000. And I mean, it's a huge swing within 6 months, right? So what's going to happen is houses are going to start sitting a little longer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing as a consumer or an investor, because the longer they sit, the more opportunities you have for an at-bat. Like in this market 2 years ago, let's be honest. I mean, you probably could agree with me. If you were to go look at a house and say, oh, I'm only going to put down 5%, your offer was going to get laughed at. Today,
right.
They may take it. And they may take that all day. Or an FHA loan at 3.5%, they may take it today, right? So you really need to have that conversation with yourself. If I'm going to buy in a year, I need to get in touch with somebody, you or myself, or somebody else, because we're not a fit for everybody, right?
Right.
Have that conversation of what I need to do today so that I can accomplish that goal in a year of buying a house. Like, I see a perfect opportunity to, I was telling you before this, I sold some stock last week and I made a pretty good money on it. I'm going to invest in the market in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm going to be buying a new primary residence. I'm going to invest it there. And there's really a lot of opportunity if you are buying a house to have, the down payment could be as low as 3% if you're a first-time buyer, right? But you can also have the sellers pay or contribute to your closing costs to buy down your interest rate. That is a perfect opportunity because I really do see in the next year or two interest rates dropping. Now, are they going to drop back to the 2% range? I don't know. But can they go back to maybe low 5s, high 4s, low 4s? Yes. And why not take the opportunity right now to get into something and then always refinance down the road? And I really think that's a really great opportunity to do. And you're going to have an opportunity in the next 6 to 12 months for prices to come down a little bit so that you can execute. Because the market is a little high right now, but there's so many people moving here in Arizona. Is it really high? I don't know. I'm not an economist, but I think it's high. The consumer thinks it's high. So if they think it's high and they're not buying, those houses are going to sit longer and longer and longer, and then those sellers are going to get frustrated and they're going to start lowering their prices. And that's when you execute. That's when you execute and you build a plan to make sure you can execute so you can go ahead and buy that home. And that's what I really think is going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. I'm super excited about this market. A lot of people are, have this scarcity of, this market's going to be like a 2008 or anything like that. No, it's not a 2008. 2008, bad loans. We don't have those bad loans right now. Honestly, they're very, very strict and they're hard sometimes and they're frustrating as loan officers. I think you can agree with that.
Sure.
But let's be honest. This is not a 2008 market. It is going to be a drop, maybe like a 2001 market, or maybe a 91 or a 92 market, where prices drop 10 to 15%. But they're not going to drop 40, 50, 60% like they did in 2008, where everyone got their shirt handed to them, right?
So let's dig into that a little bit because that is a common thing that we hear about from consumers a lot, that there's going to be a bubble burst, there's going to be a huge drop, whether it's 30, 40, 50%. And you alluded to it, it's not 2008. So what are the big differences between what happened in 2008 and what's happening right now?
Yeah, the predatory lending, really. People literally putting no money down, and getting $400,000 or $500,000 loans, and not having the income to support it. That stuff is gone. You have to, I get it. Consumers get frustrated with how much documentation that we ask for. We're making sure that we ask for that documentation so we can prevent a 2008. Because I don't know about you, I own a home, and I know you own a home. I don't want 50% value drops in my house.
No.
Because somebody didn't, falsified on a loan doc to get a house.
Right.
We don't want that. So they put the Dodd-Frank put in place to make sure that didn't happen. It was one of the things that was put in place. I know there's more, but we're not in that market. There's no predatory lending. There is no way, let's figure out a way to get a loan done. There's none of that. It's either you qualify or you don't. And if you don't qualify, let's find a plan B so that you start planning so you can get into a home.
Right.
And, I have consumers that call me and they're on the fence of are we in another bubble or or are they complaining about the interest rate? I'm like, well, when the interest rate was 2, why didn't you move forward? They're like, well, I never thought about that. I'm like, well, you either need to get shit off the pot or stay on the pot.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is, back then, this is what a lot of people don't realize is the type of loans that you're talking about that really allowed people to, work at McDonald's and state that they, made $150,000 a year, provide no proof of it, have, bad credit, let's face it, and put no money down and buy an investment property. I mean, complete and utter speculation with no skin in the game.
Yep.
And then when the market starts or their payments start to reset because we were doing them on fixed rates, for 2 years, and then people had prepayment penalties. What caused that to happen was bad lending and an oversupply of homes. That's the other piece that most people don't realize is builders were building crazy amounts of homes, more than was justified based upon demographics. So we had this perfect storm of, the supply was really high and people were able to gobble it up because of bad loans. And then once the tide turned, that's when everything came tumbling down.
Oh,
It
yeah.
wasn't a recession like we're going into or are into right now that's causing some of the challenges in the housing market. It was the housing market threw us into a recession. And today we don't have that problem with oversupply of homes. I mean, we've got, like you said, around 20,000 in our market available, but that's kind of a normal number for a balanced market.
Isn't it still low? I think the normal market's 25. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got different numbers. I've heard anywhere between like 17 to 25, but we're still short on the supply of homes overall, because there's about, I think I saw the other day, 3.2 months worth of supply, and technically a balanced market is 6 months worth of supply. Just everybody's frame of reference got totally jacked up because of everything we went through in the last 2 years with COVID. I mean, crazy low interest rates, bidding wars and home prices escalating and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of what people got used to. Now we're back to something that's more like a normal market, and people are freaking out because of all the negative, interpretations that the media likes to throw out there.
Oh yeah. It's, it's just a bunch of bullshit in my opinion. Like, just being completely real with you, like, I don't watch the news, and people...
It's a good idea.
Yeah, like, that negative connotation and the negative bullshit that's out in the market, that just gets in your head to execute, what you could really be in your life, personally. You really can name your own destiny in this world, in this country, and, there's a lot of people that will just say it's the Biden or the Trump did this, Biden did this. I don't know. It's... Come on, you can control your own destiny in this country. So,
yeah, it's a different perspective. I mean, just, not blaming outside influencers or outside forces on what your circumstances are. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite sayings is, "Everywhere I go, there I am."
Yeah.
And it's just that. Like, if you've got problems that you're focused on, you can go change your circumstances or your surroundings, but if it's you that's the source of the problems, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big piece of advice that people can take from that.
You want to buy a house, but high interest rates have got you down? Take the rate challenge and send us a verifiable loan estimate from another lender, and we'll beat it and pay for your appraisal up to $600. Here at Give Mortgage, being powered by U Mortgage allows us to provide you with unmatched speed and efficiency and the best rates and fees in the market, all while delivering you the concierge level service you deserve. We want you to have an experience getting a mortgage that you'll never forget, and not because you got put through a meat grinder to get it. At Give Mortgage, we give great advice, we give the best rates, and we give back to charity. Visit us at www.give-mortgage.com or call us at 480-331-4684 to schedule a free consultation to see how we can help.
So when you've got somebody asking you that question, you go through the explanation there. What are the opportunities? Because that's, I think, what people have to focus on is like not what the negative things are, not what the challenges are, but what are the opportunities and how do we take advantage of them? What would you say in the real estate market is the great opportunities right now?
Yeah. Sellers paying closing costs. Like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, like 2019, it was happening a little bit. But 2020, 2021, if you were asking for seller concessions,
you were getting laughed at.
And right now, they're happy. They really are. Like, I literally... last week, I got somebody on a contract, and they are like, well, I want to bid $20,000 less. And I did the math for them, and I said, why don't you give them a full price offer and then ask for a 5% concession? And they're like, well, why would I do that? Because you can use that 5% to buy down your interest rate, and your payment's going to be lower, even if you put down, if you ask for a $20,000 less purchase price. So the seller was perfectly happy with that. And that's really that's the market we're moving into. We're going to move into more sellers concessions. We're going to move into the sellers willing to pay down the interest rate, because as that property sits longer and longer and longer, think about it. They're making a housing payment they don't want. Why do they have to move? Is it a divorce situation? Sometimes those people are desperate, right? So you can have some really good opportunities to have a seller to pay down your interest rate, and then be able to get yourself in a home with a little less cash than compared to 2020 and 2021.
I think that's a really good point that you bring up there, and it also illustrates the reason why you need to have a really good real estate agent.
Yes.
Is that agent can do a lot to figure out what the motivations of the seller are.
Correct.
If you don't know what the motivations of the seller are, if you don't know they're divorced or getting transferred or whatever the case may be, as much as they might divulge, you don't know how motivated they might be and what you can ask for.
Absolutely. And I remember back in 2020, I bought my house that I'm currently in right now, and I did something that I don't recommend at all. I went in unrepresented, and I remember that agent literally, like, I asked the questions, well, why are the sellers selling? And she kind of like hinted, oh, one lost his job or whatever, and like, I could get information out of her. But you really need to have that dedicated agent on your side, because then they go to work for you. That agent is going to work for the seller. And I did it because I know if I came in unrepresented, I could probably have a better chance to win the house. And I really wanted the house. I put 5 offers in. All of them got rejected. All of them were asking for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 over list. And I was just fed up. And I was like, name your price, unrepresented on my side. I'll go ahead and do it. And they were like, all right, we'll do it this, this, and this. And I was like, all right, fine, done. And I was just like, I was so fed up. And that's the problem with the buyer, right? Back in 2020 and 2021, they were getting so fed up, they were paying 20, 40, 50,000 over appraisal, right? Here, you can maybe get a house still for 20,000 to 15,000 under appraisal. I don't know about you. All my appraisals are still coming up high, way over.
Yep.
Way over. The market hasn't shifted on the values yet. And could it in the next 6 to 12 months? I think we're going to have a low price reduction, but we're not going to have a great one. So you need to build that plan to get yourself to be able to execute during the 6 to 12 month time period.
Yeah, I think that, for the appraisals, I keep telling agents and clients, right now is the ideal time to go ask for those concessions and do what you need to do there, because the appraisers are looking back 3 to 6 months at prices to establish what the comparable sales are. Like, they'll make an adjustment maybe a little bit if the market data says it's trending downward some, but most of the time right now, I haven't seen that. Like, we're getting most of the appraisals coming in high. So you got room to play with in asking for concessions. Even if you had to ask, at list and, go above that to get concessions, you can still do it. But once we have sales coming through over the next 3 months, you get 3 to 6 months out. Now they're going to be looking back at other comps that might actually be down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have a little harder time getting those concessions because, like you kind of mentioned, everybody in the market, whether it's buyer, seller, or people on Wall Street, they emotionally overreact to things.
Oh, yeah.
And when you get people emotionally making bad decisions, that's when you get into trouble. And I think one of the things that people have to remember is you make money in real estate when you buy, not when you sell.
Correct.
So if you're going in and looking at a property right now, don't be afraid to come in under list. And your agent should be able to show you what are the comps at, what's realistic, because there's still some sellers out there that are asking way too much.
Correct. I agree with that.
And that's getting the general public to think that there's big price drops in the market, like values. If you look at the statistics, list prices are coming off. You're seeing list price reductions, but still year over year, I think nationally we're still like 7 to 8% higher than last year. So while that trend is probably going to start coming down, those year over year numbers are going to start to flip a little bit. Most of the experts we listen to and follow are still thinking single digit appreciation. Yeah. Low single digit appreciation. So if you can come in and make a price offer that's 10% below list and you can get that done, you're probably in pretty good shape, because even if we do take a dip of 10% in prices in the next year, as soon as rates come back down,
they're going to go right back up.
Everything's going to go back up. Yep. That's the piece that everybody's missing. It's like, this is all happening because of where rates are at.
Correct.
And they're going to come down. We don't know when, but like you said, with recession, they're going to come back down.
They have to.
Yeah.
They have to spur economic growth, right? It's a basic supply and demand issue. When supply is high, demand's low. What do prices do, right?
Yep. And the cure for inflation is inflation.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, man. It's just so I have a client, I don't know if you know that huge LG plant that's going to be out in Queen Creek.
No, I don't think I heard of that.
It's down by, I don't know, I think it's off of like Sossaman or something like that. Anyway, I have a client from Illinois that's going to be moving here to basically help manage that plant. and he's living in Illinois, and he wants to buy here because he's living in the basement of his in-laws, and he wants to buy here. And I'm like, all right, so what's your motivation to buy? He's like, I don't know what it will take to get me out of living out a basement, but I'll do it. And I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, so what do you have for closing costs? What do you have for down payment? Had those conversations. He's like, oh, I'm glad I called you because I really need to start building a plan. And I was like, yeah, you really need to start putting, 15, 20% of your paycheck into an actual account so that you can execute in the next 6 to 12 months. And you may get an opportunity to buy something and have a seller pay your closing costs. And if that happens, that's gravy.
Yeah. Well, and the beautiful thing right now that, buyers just couldn't take advantage of over the last couple of years is there's down payment assistance too. Like
there is,
people can literally get in with, very, very little out of pocket.
Correct. And those loans are not like they used to be in like 2008. And you really need to have the conversation with the consumer. And as a consumer, you really need to have a conversation with the loan officer or a mortgage broker about what does that loan actually mean? Because there's loans out there, you live in a house and you rent it out and it's a down payment assistance. There could be repercussions for that. Depending on the loan. Now, there's loans there are, and there's loans that are not. Like, if you're not living in the house within 3 years or anything like that, those can be forgiven or whatever. But you really need to have that conversation and really talk to someone that is educated on that stuff, because you can get yourself into a real pickle if you bank on that, and then next thing you know, something happens. Because we all know life happens, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's the good stuff that has kind of come back around that we didn't see for the longest time, is most of them, like you said, had a forgiveness period or repayment period, and the ones that we see now, it's straight grant money. So it's like you stay in it for 6 months. As long as you can do that, you're in good shape. Like, that's correct. I don't want to say free money, but it is not something you got to pay back. So,
but this is what I also say: there is no such thing as a free lunch.
No,
right? So don't anticipate, if you're taking a free grant, that the interest rate is competitive.
No,
that's
it's
what
not.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's definitely.
So
not.
There's always a cost, right?
Yep.
And there's no such thing as a free lunch. I learned that in Econ 101 in high school, and that thing, I thought, when my teacher said that, I thought that was the stupidest thing ever. And then when you go through college and you go through life and you go, oh wow, that's pretty
brilliant, huh?
That's pretty brilliant, and that makes a lot of sense. And the things that happen when you actually grow up, right, and you start seeing life.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about too is you had mentioned before in a previous conversation about investment properties and taking maybe the place that you first start with as an investment and turning that into more investments. Can you kind of like give an idea of how does somebody maybe go from their first home to investing in real estate and then turning that into multiple properties?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a strategy that I've taught many people, and I've done it myself, is you buy your first home with 5% down. Obviously, if you have a family, this is completely different. But if you're single and you're young, you have roommates move in. Those roommates, you make the mortgage payment yourself, and those roommates pay extra towards the principal. You pay down that mortgage when you want to go buy another property. You do a cash out refinance, take that equity, use that equity to go buy your next home. And then you run out the first home, and then you keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And I've helped people get 10 to 15 doors doing that way. And with rents up, let's be honest, rents are not going to go down. Rents always go up, right? It's a supply and demand issue. Supply is kind of low on the rental market. Demand's high. Prices are going to rise, right? So that's a really good opportunity, and that's really the good strategy of buying a house for the first time. Put 5% down, have a couple people move in, pay that mortgage down, and then in a couple years, take out a cash out refinance, borrow against the equity because we have an appreciating asset. Go ahead and buy your next property. What people don't understand is that a house is an asset. Unless you have the ability to access the equity in the asset, it doesn't mean anything. People are always talking about lowest interest rates or lowest payment or anything like that. What can you do to execute a plan to access equity into something to go build more wealth? That's my plan. That's my theory. And a lot of people can disagree with me on that, and that's okay. But I'm all about, what is my, obviously the payment's important because you got to make that payment. But what is my opportunity to access the equity of that property to go build more wealth? Like these people that are paying cash for houses right now, or paying cash back when interest rates are 2, I literally started laughing at them, and I was called a jerk because of it, but I literally laughed at them. I said, you could borrow an asset at 2.5% equity or 2.5% interest, and you want to pay cash. Why don't you put down 20% and use that cash to go buy more and then build yourself more wealth? And they're like, well, I just don't want a payment. Well, do you want no payment or do you want to build wealth? Because I'm pretty sure wealth creates cash flow. Cash flow creates opportunity and peace of mind. But correct me if I'm wrong. Right?
Yeah. It's a math problem is what it boils down to. Like,
and
if you don't do the math, then you base your decisions on just an idea that's flawed oftentimes. Like you said, we talked about that. Like, what else can you do with that cash?
Correct.
Can you buy 4 properties instead of buying 1 property? Yeah. Can you put it in the stock market? I mean, back then people were probably earning 10 to 15% returns on their money in the stock market. Like, there's lots of ways that people can take money that the bank is willing to give you at 2.5%, 3.5%, whatever the rate is, and go do something more productive than that with it. And it's just simple leveraging. Like, you work the math, and if it works out, go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was telling you before we got on today, is I invested in a solar stock a couple years ago. Solar stock was at 86 cents a share. I bought a considerable amount. I just sold some last week for $312 a share. Like, guys, there's opportunity out there. You just got to find those opportunities, and you got to have the plan to be able to execute on those opportunities. And it all comes down to leveraging your assets.
Right. If
you can't leverage your assets and you just are too scared because you don't want monthly payments or whatever, come on. You're missing out on a bigger opportunity and a bigger opportunity to go ahead and create more wealth for your family and yourself.
So in terms of investment properties, do you feel like now, so I guess, what do you think the type of properties would be ideal right now? Or do you think single family residences, apartments, small units? Like, what do you think are the best opportunities right now?
Well, in Gilbert right now, they're building all these mega apartment buildings. And what I'm hearing is people don't want to live in apartments anymore. They want to have the single family home. They want to raise their kids in a single family home. So really, I think the single family home or duplex or something is better. There's a lot of real estate investors that say, unless it has, multiple doors, I'm not going to buy it. I don't necessarily agree with that, because if it's one door, sometimes you can charge a little more compared to if it has multiple doors. Personally, that's my opinion. But I really think single family homes in the next 6 to 12 months as an investor, if you come down with a good, strong down payment and good plan, you can maybe buy 2 to 3 homes pretty easily. And the interest is, check with your tax advisor, but let's be honest, interest can be a tax write-off. So, right.
Yeah.
Not an investment property. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the thing that people have to remember when they're looking at an opportunity is, you have to look at your own particular situation, and you have to measure out, like, what does this look like in terms of an investment of my cash flow? If you're looking at a single family residence, with interest rates where they are today, you may not be at a break even. I mean, you may have to be out of pocket a little bit of money each month. But down the road, when rates come down, you can sort of fix that imbalance, because what you're going to have is you're going to have probably appreciating rents over the next few years. And then if you can get the interest rate lower through a refinance, you might be able to fix that cash flow thing. But, somebody might look at a 4-unit place and see, well, I actually might still have, positive cash flow. But, look at then what's the appreciation rates. I'm like, you got to do all the math, and ultimately you got to find the right person to help you through that.
Correct.
Both a real estate person and a mortgage person, because someone with experience as a realtor in working with investors is a critical piece of that team that you need to put together, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know a lot of real estate investors right now that are absolutely killing it on properties that are close to hospitals and military bases. Let's think about that. Military bases, they constantly are on the move. They get PCS somewhere else. There's constant flow. Hospitals, travel nurses. You can name your rent. And usually, sometimes that travel nurse is on a contract and that agency is paying their rent, so they don't care what the rent is because the agency is paying for it, right? So you really can name your price. So those are really good actual ways to go ahead and start building wealth, is buy close to things that they're going to have constant change, because constant change brings opportunity for you to be able to create more wealth.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing. I think that's really good advice.
Another good one, college campuses.
Yep.
Like U of A, go Cats. I don't know if you're an ASU fan. I'm sorry if you are. My fiance, I'm getting married next week. My fiance actually worked at ASU for 10 plus years, and she's a ASU grad. I'm a U of A grad, so we have a split house. But college campuses right now, like if you're within walking distance to a university, man, you can name your price, because those kids don't usually have a car. Parents sometimes are paying for it, and they don't want their credit messed up, so you always know that you have a payment coming in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you can usually get some decent cash flow if you've got enough bedrooms to put multiple tenants in there.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I didn't share a room in college, but my brother who went to University of Michigan, he shared a room. And, there's people but that can lower your costs, right? When I went to U of A, I mean, rent was super cheap compared to what it was now. I lived in less than a mile from campus, and I think my room was like $400 a month. And I had 4 roommates, so we each paid $400. But like, if you get multiple roommates, it's not really, it's doable, right?
Yeah.
And then just think about it. If you could, find a place that you could split it and then charge more, the kids will probably do it because they want to be within walking distance, because they don't want to have a car that's close to campus, because then you have to pay for parking and gas and insurance and all that stuff. So that's really a good way to go about it.
Right. Yeah, that's good advice. So before we get things all finished up here, one thing I always like to ask people is, because people, consumers getting into real estate, whether it's their first house or, fifth house, there's still so much that people don't understand about the whole process. Like,
correct.
What would you say is one big thing that you see people misunderstanding or don't know about the whole real estate process, whether it's on the real estate or mortgage side, that they really should know?
Yeah. So some of the stuff that you really should know is like, the areas that you're looking at. Really look at the areas, and if you're really going to see yourself living in that area long term. Don't just buy a house because of the price point. Look at the area, because if you're not happy in that area, you're not going to be happy. Or if you don't like that area long term, you're not going to be happy, and there's no point to be unhappy in life. And then also really get yourself educated about the different loans out there. There's options as little as 3% down if you're a first-time home buyer, and really get educated of what that exactly means and what private mortgage insurance is, and really get educated on a YouTube channel like mine or yours or anything like that, and really get educated about that, because it's not just about your down payment. There's closing costs, and really get educated what closing costs is, because as a loan officer, we can't control those closing costs usually, right?
Right.
And that's where people, really get frustrated, is they didn't know that they needed money for closing costs. They only have money for down payment. So really get yourself educated what it is going to take, and get in touch with get in touch with somebody like yourself or myself to really get educated about what the home buying process looks like. Because everyone just sees this HGTV as a realtor, it's real easy, or buying a house is real easy. No, it's not. Like, I think you said you've been doing this for 27 years, and
yeah,
I will be doing this for 27 years at one point in my career. I'm sitting at 7, 5, 6, something like that right now. Like, you gotta get educated, and when you get educated, then you can make an informed decision. So
yeah, the thing that I try to remind people of is, don't go and start the process of buying a house by looking at houses.
Correct.
Like, that's the mistake that most people make, because we get this desire, we see, a show on HGTV, or we see the pretty pictures, and we start there. And there's so much more to it than that. Like, you really need to start with the numbers. You need to figure out the financial aspect first, so you can put that plan in place. Like you said, like, you might want to do it now, but you might not be able to.
Correct.
So you need to figure those numbers out first. Once you have the numbers figured out, then go look for the house.
Correct.
Do your research on the area, start that process. I think, it's really good to get people, focused on the numbers side of it. It's not sexy. It's not the fun part of it, of buying a house, but it's the most important piece of figuring out what you can do.
Yeah, because if you can't get financing to buy a house, guess what? You have to pay cash. And I don't know about you. I don't want to spend $350,000, $300,000 in cash right now. So.
For sure.
when there could be a lot of opportunity in 6 to 12 months in the market.
That's the thing. Like, just don't. You touched on it before. If you put a bunch of cash into a house and you can't access it,
Doesn't mean anything.
You lose tons of opportunities.
Correct.
And I see that all the time with people. Just, I don't want to payment, so I'll pay cash for it. And it's like,
so I think, back when the market in 2020, 2021, I was doing mostly refis, interest only, ARMs. A lot of people are scared of those loans. Interest only, those are really good loans if you know how to work your money, right? And my boss taught me that saying. It was like, if you have a paid off house, or if you don't have a way to access the equity in a house, it doesn't mean anything. That equity can go away like that, right? And if you don't have a plan to access that equity, you're wasting your time, because you can't build more equity and you can't build more wealth. That's how the people like Bill Gates, all those people, they invented, but they leverage other people's money. Let's be honest. They may not say it, but they did. They did leverage other people's money. So why don't you leverage other people's money and go build more wealth and leverage the bank's money, right? Or the broker's money, or anybody's money.
Yeah. Right?
So that really creates more opportunity for yourself.
Yep. Absolutely. So if somebody has been listening to us and they feel like, hey, I need to talk to this Drew guy, how do they get in touch with you? Yeah,
so my cell phone number is 312-802-0794. You can also go to kozellending.com. You can also find me on Facebook or Instagram, Drew Kozel, Kozel.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully you have a very beautiful wedding and enjoy your trip.
Please. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's going to be absolutely wonderful, and I can't wait. Wednesday the 5th can't come fast enough.
So everybody can celebrate your wedding on the 5th.
I will be very happy when it's over, because the planning of a wedding, as you know, is very stressful.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Awesome, Drew. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys all for joining us as well. Make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification button. Share this out to people who you feel like would benefit from the stuff that we're sharing. And then tune back in next week for the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Take care.
Thanks for joining us, and please remember to go and subscribe, like, share, all that cool stuff to help us grow, and come back to listen to our next episode. Until then, go out and live life uncensored.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to help us out and subscribe. Follow and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out on YouTube for the full video podcast. If you want more information on any of the topics discussed on today's episode, email us at uncensoredrealestatepodcast@gmail.com or give the Cardenas Mortgage Team a call at 480-331-4684.